Hariom. So, I'm behind my schedule, so I'll move a little quickly through some of this material, but I want to get to the yoga part. The caste system. This is a big one, but we'll do it briefly. There are basically 4 or 5, depending how you look at it, major castes. There's a lot of subcastes also. Now, caste was the system of organizing society, and the original idea was pretty good theoretically, and that was everybody has their role in society. We're all equal, and we're all important, but we all have different functions, and you have to sort of stay in your role, and that kind of worked pretty well. But human beings being what they are, which is human, the people who are on top, like the Brahmins or the warrior caste, they became a little powerful and it went to their heads and the system became abused. And actually the caste system is very similar to the feudal system in medieval Europe, where people had their different roles. There were the clergy, there were the rulers and the warriors, there were the merchants, there were the farmers and the servants, and all the way down. So that's basically what the caste system is. And it had become corrupted in India, and unfortunately still with many people it's there. And the origins of it were religious and philosophical, but it's become sort of social and cultural, and they are doing what they can to try and make things better, but it'll obviously take a long time. I mean, the system evolved over thousands of years, and they aren't going to be able to get rid of it or perfect it in the next 10 or 20 years. But people obviously now with more communication and internet and all of that are becoming much more aware of it, which is good. And it's hopefully going to improve over time. So you had the Brahmins with an M-I-N-S as opposed to Brahman, M-A-N, who is the supreme consciousness. The Brahmins are the upper caste. They're the priests, and they do the rituals. The Kshatriyas, KS is hard to say in English, Kshatriyas are the warriors and the administrators. They kind of defend the country, rule the country, run the country. And then the Vaishyas are the merchants, and every society needs merchants. The Shudras are the lower caste, they're the servants. And then the Dalits, or as Gandhi called them, the Harijans, are the lowest caste. And they're the untouchables. They do things like clean the toilets, or sweep the streets, or pick up the manure, or whatever. And they're probably, even in modern India, the most badly treated people, and it is a problem, but they are working on it. India has actually had a Dalit prime minister 10 years ago. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was a Dalit. That was a big thing for them. It's like us having a black president. It's like, whoa. So for them to have a Dalit as president was a big deal. So they are making some progress on that. Gandhi was very much, you're all familiar with Gandhi? Okay, good. Gandhi was very much into the cause of the Harijans, or the Dalits, and he would not go into temples that would not permit the Dalits or the untouchables to go in. He came to South India to the huge Meenakshi temple, and he said, I won't come to this temple until you let the untouchables come in. And by 1945, they were letting them come in, and he returned to Madurai, where the Meenakshi temple is, and he did go in the temple. So he was very much for the cause of uplifting the untouchables. So that's a little bit about caste. The 4 stages of life. Both of these concepts are mentioned in the reading that you did. 4 stages of life. They have the students, the young people, brahmacharyas, where they concentrate on studying and learning things. Then they have the householders, the grihastha, and these are people get married, they have children, they keep things going. Vanaprastha, you get older, you retire, you lead a more secluded life, that's what I'm working on. And then sannyasa, actually that's what I'm working on. Sannyasa is actually formally renouncing. Sort of the vanaprastha, you're getting into it, you're retiring, you're pulling back from the world, your children have grown up, but then you can finally take those vows of sannyas, and you'll notice we wear orange clothes. Orange are a symbol of fire. When you do the initiation for sannyas, you have an Agni puja, which is a fire puja, and in that puja you offer sticks. And the sticks are all your possessions, your mental possessions, your physical possessions, your relatives, everything you offer. You're offering that and just making yourself available to everyone in the world. And the main, really the only vow of a sannyasa is renunciation. You renounce attachment to all things. We'll get more into that as we talk about Raja Yoga. I thought it would be interesting to give you a little bit of history on Hinduism and Vedanta philosophy in America. It's not a long history, so we can get through it quickly. Probably some of you or most of you have read Emerson or Thoreau, the Transcendentalists. They were the ones who had the first experience of reading the scriptures from India. And actually the scriptures from India weren't translated into English until the late 1700s. So it's really only been the past couple hundred years that the Upanishads and the Vedas and the Mahabharata and the Gita have even been available. It's not like they were read 500 years ago. It's only the past 300 years, or less than that, 1780 or so. So the Transcendentalists, Walden, they had the first concept and were influenced by Eastern thought, Vedanta. Swami Vivekananda, maybe some of you have heard of him. He was a great Indian sannyasin, came to America in 1893 to the Parliament of World Religions, and it was the first time a Hindu had really made a big impact in the press and in the media and to the public in America. And he spoke at the World Congress of Religions, and he started by saying, "My brothers and sisters." And everybody was embraced, and people were very astonished by it.
It was a 2-minute standing ovation.
Yeah, and it was a very short speech. It was only like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So Swami Vivekananda, he was the first one to really teach Raja Yoga, which we'll talk about more as soon as we get there soon. Raja Yoga is sort of the philosophy of yoga. And you know, Houston Smith makes a big deal out of Raja Yoga, and it's appropriate. Coming more recently, Paramahamsa Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi. Many people have read that and been influenced by that. I read it years ago. So he was in 1920. He started the Self-Realization Fellowship in California, Los Angeles. It's still thriving and doing very well. They had a documentary on him recently, which they showed here at the Quad. I can't remember the name of it. It was very good.
Awake.
Awake. Yeah, it was really good. So if you get a chance to see Awake, see that. Then there was Swami Prabhavananda. Now maybe you may not remember the name, but he wrote a book called How to Know God, which was very big back in the 60s and 70s. And it was basically the first widely read commentary on the Yoga Sutras, which is the basis of Raja Yoga. And that was in 1953 he wrote that. So those are the major influences. The next ones came in the 1960s, and that was Swami Vishnu Devananda and Swami Satchidananda. And then at that time also there was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was Osho, what was his name? Rajneesh, Swami Muktananda. So in the 60s, was really the floodgates were open. That's when really a lot of this came into America. Well, he never came to America.
No, he never came.
His followers did.
Yogi Bhajan.
Yeah, Yogi Bhajan. He was very close to Swami Satchidananda. When we would have our ecumenical services, Yogi Bhajan would be the Sikh representative. He was a very powerful person. I met him at the airport once and shook his hand, and it was like I had stuck my finger in an electric socket. Really, it was like, it was a jolt. It was totally amazing. So that's a little bit of the history of yoga in America, very briefly and quickly.
There's Sorry.
Yes, question?
Just a comment, because we're talking about Hinduism and not only yoga, that probably you should mention Prabhupada and the Hare Krishna movement.
Okay, yeah, they were very big. And they were actually right here. They started on 2nd Avenue or 1st Avenue around 3rd or 4th Street. And they had a center there.
And of course, Dr. Mishra, who then became Sri Brahmananda, who the Nanda Ashram, and I mention this because that's where we have our retreats every year.
And that's where Swami Satchidananda had his first retreats back in the 60s.
Right, and a lot of visiting Swamis and teachers used to come through there. In fact, Prabhupada himself actually had come through there for a while and gotten some of his first disciples.
Yeah, we were very lucky in the 60s and 70s to have all of these great sages and saints from India come to America.
It's all.
Yeah, so
Turn it
is
on.
it,
It's all.
so, now it's on. And so is this really common? I mean, because I can think of a couple that you haven't mentioned that just because they're in this area, Guru Mai in South Fallsburg and the Kripalu Yoga Center. And so are those just two more of a
Yeah, I
100 or
think
1,000?
due to time limits, we can't.
Well, no, but
Yeah, well, he mentioned Muktananda, that's
Yeah.
the same lineage. He was
Same.
Swami's
Okay.
so.
So, no, I was just wondering if there was way more than I had.
There's Sri Aurobindo, Ramana Maharshi, who never came to America, but have had a great influence in their writings and their disciples in America. They were two giants from the 1940s and 50s. There's many of them, and we're very fortunate. And anyone you want to pick up and investigate is definitely worthwhile.
I remember hearing a story of Chidananda that Swami Shivananda in the late 50s had a dream or a vision, and he told Swami Vishnu that it's time, that the West is ready. It's time to go.
And it was.
And it was.
True.
Well, one of the big reasons, and I don't want to get too much of a diversion, one of the big reasons is in the 1960s what became very common.
LSD.
LSD, marijuana, and there was a book by Aldous Huxley, which I'm sure some of you have read, called The Doors of Perception.
Oh, yeah.
And I read that book, and it was like, whoa. I think that I read that before I got involved with yoga. And drugs were an artificial way of getting to some of those states you can get to by taking a sort of longer path and more energy you have to put into it. But the natural way to do it is meditation. But through LSD and marijuana, you can go to these other states, which are super conscious. And it opens your mind up, your doors of perception.
In that connection, Ram Dass is very important.
Yeah.
And there's the perennial philosophies, the Huxley book about Vedanta.
Hmm?
The Huxley wrote about
Yeah.
Vedanta too, yeah.
Yeah, no, this was, Swami Prabhupada knew these people very well. And that's why I think his book, How to Know God, became very popular in the 60s and 70s.
And Jim Morrison started a group called The Doors. But that's where they get the name, from the Doors of Perception.
Very good.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then they-
So, yeah, when Swami Satchidananda came, the first people besides Rabbi Gilberman were the hippies. Or maybe Rabbi Gilberman was a hippie, I don't know. I never thought of that.
It was a dandy.
And they get-
A dandy.
So, yeah, all of the hippies came around, and they would even be smoking.
And Peter Max also.
Yeah, well, Peter Max is the one who brought Swami Satchidananda to America. So, and Swamiji didn't say, no, don't stop your drugs. He said, I have a better way to do this. It's more healthy, it's more natural, it's more lasting, and it won't harm you. It's very good for you. So,
And
yeah.
it's free.
And it's, yeah, it's free. That's true.
I'm sorry. If you watch the Woodstock movie, the documentary
Yes.
on the Woodstock
Swami
Art
Satchidananda.
Festival, there's a scene where they're doing fire-breathing yoga. They're laying on the ground, and the guy who's instructing them says, "If you do this right, you'll be peaking momentarily and having a hallucinogenic experience without the drugs."
Yeah, the 60s were really opened many doors.
Woodstock really made Satchidananda famous.
Yeah, he opened Woodstock with chanting.
Right, so that's when he was on the national stage.
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah. So,
Questions?
yes,
Yeah.
questions?
I remember meeting somebody at Mount Madonna in California, but I don't remember his name. Does that mean, okay, never
That's
mind.
it's a big center out there where they
Yeah.
had many conferences, but I don't specifically know.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. This-
So I was very happy to see that Houston Smith ended the last third of his segment on Hinduism is about the 4 yogas. So I was so happy to see that. And finally, after the 4 yogas, he started to talk about reincarnation and karma. And I was saying, because in the beginning I was saying, when is he going to get to this? Because these concepts of reincarnation and karma, the law of what you do, as you sow, so you shall reap, is very basic in Hinduism and even in people's everyday life in India. They're very conscious of that. One big thing you should note, in the West we have kind of a morality that's you do this and you don't do this, and if you do this, that's evil and bad and it's a sin and you'll go to hell. At least that was my background. In the East, they don't have that concept. There's things that are beneficial for your spiritual development and things that are not beneficial to your spiritual development. So it's not a morality issue, and it's not a judgment issue. It's for your own benefit. Do these things and you'll be happy and peaceful. If you do these things, you may be temporarily happy and feel successful, but you're going to suffer from it. So that's a really big difference, but I think for a lot of Christians and Jews is very hard to understand that you don't have to have morality and judgment. You know, karma will come back to you eventually. I don't have to be the one to tell you you're going to go to hell if you do this. And as far as hell is around us. Hell is what we create in our own minds. We create our own hells or heavens by what we think and how we act and how we behave. So getting into the 4 yogas. I gave you should have a sheet in your handout. I did a sheet on each one, which was easy to do because I've given talks on each one of them separately. So I'm the type person that does like to get back to the scriptural basis of a concept. You know, I figured there's more validity to it if it's been around for a few thousand years and been tested and proven. And the Bhagavad Gita, which I mentioned is kind of Hinduism's Bible, is the source of much of the learning and philosophy that is presently practiced. So Jnana Yoga is sort of the form of, well, let me define yoga first. Yoga means union. And it's not only the union of truth as one has or many union, but it's the actual physiological union that takes place in your body through doing certain practices that unites you on this physical level with the divine. And it's, again, the wonderful thing about yoga is it's really a science. They even use the expression science of yoga. Because if you do certain things, you will get certain results. If you make a cake and you do things right, the temperature is right, the ingredients are right, you don't jump up and down while it's in the oven, the cake will come out really nice. And it's the same with yoga. You do certain practices on a regular basis, you will get the results, you will get the benefit. And the result is this union. And in Hinduism, they call it samadhi. The experience of that union is samadhi. Other traditions call it nirvana. They have other terms for it. And moksha is liberation. You become free from all of the cares and concerns of life when you get this union, when you get this samadhi. So moksha, liberation, and samadhi, this ultimate state, are very important concepts. And the big difference between Eastern thought and Western is in Eastern thought, you can do it in this lifetime. You can actually experience God and become one with God in this lifetime. In Western thought, it's somewhere over there, and maybe after you die, if you've done things right, you'll get that union. In Eastern thought, you can actually have it now. Now, the disadvantage of Eastern thought is if you don't get it right, you have to keep coming back again. There was a movie called Groundhog Day, where you have
Yeah.
to keep doing things until you got them right. Well, that's kind of Hinduism. You have to keep doing things and eventually you'll get it right. And hopefully you learn from each lifetime. So Jnana Yoga. That's for people who like to think and analyze. Ramana Maharshi was the biggest modern exponent of Jnana Yoga. So if you're interested in Jnana Yoga, look up Ramana Maharshi. I didn't put his name down anywhere. I won't go into this too much, but basically it's just analyzing who you are, what you're doing here, watching, becoming aware and watching yourself, using the mind to observe itself and to question. And basically you have more understanding, revelations, and awareness as you get into this idea of self-analysis, really. So for people who are mentally oriented, Jnana Yoga is a very good form of yoga to practice. And you can read these different sayings on here, and that will help. Karma Yoga. This is probably in India what most people feel they're practicing. Well, this in Bhakti Yoga. Karma Yoga is your daily actions, what you do in your life. And again, Houston Smith gets into this. He starts to talk about it, I think, as the third stage. What's the expression he uses? I wrote it down. What did I write? He talks about the path of desire and the path of renunciation. And the first two sections, he talks about the path of desire, the mind reaching out to grasp onto things and just have fun. The second step in the path of desire was you establish a career so you can become famous, you can become rich, you can become powerful. The third and fourth steps he calls the path of renunciation. And the third step is really the Karma Yoga step, where what you do in your life is for the benefit of other people, like what you're doing here. You want to become ecumenical interfaith ministers so you can benefit the world and benefit other people, as well as benefiting yourself at the same time. So Karma Yoga is this path of doing things for the benefit of others. I put two quotes down there. Perfection in action is yoga, and a perfect act is one which harms no one and does good for someone. And these are really what I use as my touchstone for whenever I question what I'm doing. I say, is this action going to harm no one, including myself, and do good for someone? So Karma Yogi is someone who goes through life not looking for the benefit to come back to them, not looking for fame, power, or money, but just looking to be a perfect instrument that performs actions that help other people and help raise yourself spiritually. So that's what a Karma Yogi does. And in India, as I say, that's what most people who are really interested in their spiritual life, the householders, the people with families, the people with businesses, they look upon their practice as Karma Yoga. Their religious practice is Karma Yoga, doing benefit for other people and serving other people. That's Karma Yoga. Bhakti Yoga. This is also a very popular form, and it's very popular, I think, in all religions. Bhakti Yoga is the outward demonstration of your faith by going to your temple, your church, your mosque, paying respects to your favorite deity, your form of God, worshiping God, showing your love and devotion to God. And ultimately, if you really get into it and focus on it, you begin to merge with that form that you are worshiping or paying respect to. In Christianity, of course, it's Christ. In Islam, it's Allah. In Judaism, it's Yahweh. In Hinduism, they have a lot of choices. But basically, you meditate or focus on your aspect of God, and you merge with it through your prayer, through your worship. So that's Bhakti Yoga. And obviously you don't practice just one of these. You have some elements of all of them probably in your life. But usually for an individual, one of them will be predominant. And it's better to have one predominant, because you want to focus your energies. Okay, so you can read about that. I want to get to the Raja Yoga, because that's my favorite. And it's also Houston Smith's final talk on yoga. Raja Yoga is a path that's for people who are inquisitive, but they want to be busy and do something. And of course, in the West, when you think of Raja Yoga, what most people think of is, when you think of yoga, what do you think of?
Hatha yoga.
Hatha yoga, exercise. And it's kind of sad in America, it's really come down to that. If you mention yoga in India, Hatha yoga is not what comes to their mind. They don't think of that. But in America, yoga, even these other forms of yoga, if you say yoga, it's Hatha yoga. And that's just a very small part of Raja yoga. So Raja yoga is called the royal path. Raja, like Maharaja, is a person, a royal person. And in this royal path, you have a whole system or a lifestyle. And we'll go through it a little bit. Does anybody have any questions on any of the other things we've talked about?
No, but I want to just say one thing.
Yeah.
We do have something here on Ramana.
Oh, I do? Okay.
Yeah, a whole blurb on the,
Oh, back of Jnana Yoga?
on the back of Yana.
Ah, okay, so turn over your Jnana Yoga and there's Ramana Maharya. He's very important.
Yes, he's got a,
Yeah.
he devoted a lot to it.
So yeah, please read that over. So Raja Yoga, this whole system of yoga, and it's very organized. You have two sheets. One says Raja Yoga, and one says the 8 limbs of yoga. So
It's a separate sheet.
the second sheet. So the Yoga Sutras are divided into 4 books. The first book talks in general about yoga and the mind. The second book is pretty much devoted to these 8 limbs of yoga. The third book is devoted to siddhis or powers that are gained by doing yoga, like levitating, walking on fire, things like that. And the fourth book is dedicated to describing the different levels or stages of samadhi or ultimate liberation. So normally at our center, when we teach about Raja Yoga, we don't really talk too much about the third and fourth books. We talk primarily about the first and second books. And that's what I'll sort of focus on in the next 25 minutes. So this one, we will go over the sheet on Raja Yoga. We have the Yoga Sutras. There's only about 300 sutras. And whenever you pick up a Raja Yoga book, and even some of the Bhagavad Gita book, there's commentary. Because a lot of this is not so easy to understand if you're not familiar with the vocabulary and the system of philosophy that it comes from. So you need a commentary, or you need somebody who knows the commentary to teach you verbally. So all Raja Yoga books will have a commentary. And a lot of Bhagavad Gita books have commentaries or introductions to each chapter that explain what they are. Because they're so condensed that they're, might not understand it. So the definition of yoga on the top, Book 1, Sutra 2, the strength of the modifications of the mind is yoga. And yoga means union, so you're focusing the mind so you can get to that union. If your mind is not focused, you can't get to it. And in yoga, they believe the mind has 3 phases. It has the first phase, which perceives something. You're walking down the street and you smell something. The second phase of the mind defines that something. It'll say, I'm walking down 14th Street past a place called Rocco's and I smell pizza. And the mind says, you smelled something first? Now we'll define what that is. That's pizza. The third phase of the mind is the ego. That says, I like pizza. I'm going to go in there and get a slice. Or it says, I really don't like pizza. And you keep walking. So you have the sensation, you have the definition, and then you have the reaction, the ego coming in and judging it. And this is where our duality comes in. What does the ego say? It says, I want to pull it to me, or I want to push it away from me. So that's the duality we have. We want to pull things to us, or we want to push them away from us. So I have a little demonstration. We have to have the demonstration. If we have time at the end, I'll get into Nataraj. Okay, the demonstration. Should I move this a little closer?
Yeah, move the table in a little closer to the camera.
And this may seem very...
That's good, that's good.
This may seem very simple. I'll take these other exchange. I'll need some volunteers too. Okay.
Don't all jump at once.
Okay. I'll need 4 volunteers. So, this body of water represents our mind, and the water is our mind stuff, the stuff that's in our mind. And this crystal in the middle represents our true nature. And our true nature is hidden within us. One story they tell is when God created the world, the last thing he had was happiness and peace. And he said, where should I put them? Should I hide them in the mountains, in the woods? Should I put them in the ocean? And somebody said, no, put them inside. That's the last place they'll look. So this is our peace of mind right in there. That's our true nature. So what happens in our daily life? When a child comes into the world, everybody's overjoyed. Oh, we have a new one of us has come in. And of course, what's the child's reaction? Child, like, where am I? I was really happy in there, and it was nice and calm and peaceful. I'm out here now. So we want to get back to our true nature. But what happens in life? That child comes out, it's nice and pure and innocent, but then it starts being influenced by the world, and it starts experiencing its senses. So let's say it sees another kid with a toy, so it becomes envious. So we'll say envious is this color. So put a few drops of envy in the mind.
It's supposed to be.
Oops.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's how much you need. So we have some envy going in. And then it gets really upset and angry that it can't have it. So it starts getting angry. So put a little anger in. Oh, very good. Very angry.
Very angry.
And then the mother says, no, you can't do that. You have to come away. So what does the child do after it gets angry? It's suppressed. So blue, you feel blue. So we'll put some blue in for depression. All right. Okay, boy, we're very depressed. Okay. And what color is this? Green.
You should have had.
Oh, that should have been envy.
That
Oh.
should have been ended, right.
So, well, we have other emotions. This will be all other emotions that affect us. Okay, so we have some green in there. Okay? So, then you take all these emotions and you start stirring them up in the mind, and what happens to your true nature?
Yuck.
It's gone. So this is what happens to us. Our mind is really, if our mind is pure and clear, like you go see a nice lake and you can see down to the bottom even though it's 10, 12, 20 feet, that's a clear mind. You throw a rock in, you put mud in the pond, you can't see the bottom anymore. But the nice thing is that our true nature is still the same. It hasn't changed. It's just our mind has become clouded, so we've lost sight of our true nature. So the system, thank you. So the system of yoga is to find our true nature. Come back to that true nature. Yeah, I like that demonstration because it made an impression on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's really good one.
There's a line in the Tao that says, can you sit still till the mud settles and your water becomes clear?
Yeah, that's what it is, just getting the mind clear. So, restraining the modifications, all of these fluctuations in our mind, will bring us to that union. Number 1.4, at other times, the self appears to assume the forms of the mental modifications. meaning we're identifying with this world of Maya or illusion. We're thinking this is real. I remember at our ashram, many yogis moved to Yogaville, our center down in Virginia. It was started in 1980. And people came from all over the country, Colorado, California. They brought their families, their jobs, they relocated, and they wanted to do yoga, follow Swami Chidananda. So at one point, he started a school. And he said, well, the ideal school is what's called a Gurukulam. And a Gurukulam is where the students go and live with the teachers. And then they have their vacation, they come home with their family. But during their schooling, when they're having their active school, they go live with the teachers. So they can learn not only from the text and what they do in class, but they can learn from the example of living with the teachers. So he said, I want to start a Gurukulam. And it was on the ashram property, so most people lived within half a mile. He said, I'd like the children to live there, and then they can come home on the weekends, and they can come home in the summer. Well, you wouldn't believe how people reacted. It was like you were tearing out their teeth or something. They said, oh no, we can't do that, it's terrible. So what is that? That's attachment. You know, they were going to be right there. They weren't taking them to some other state or something. They were like half a mile away, and they'd be able to see them on the weekends in the summer, but the people couldn't deal with it. And that, you know, you look and say, but there's family. But still, that's attachment. If you really love someone, they should be able to come and they should be able to go. If they say, honey, I want to divorce you, what can I do to help you? You know, what do you need so you can go to this next stage of your life? But no, that's not the reaction. There's another story. Swami Chidananda was on the Larry King show, and he told this story. He said, what happens, you come home, husband comes home, finds the wife in bed with somebody else. He screams, he rants, and he raves. The other man gets up and he runs out the door. So, no, if you really have it together, you'll see what's happening. You'll say, I'm going to go make a cup of tea, a pot of tea. Let's all sit down and talk about this. You know, who's in control of the situation then? But again, the mind can't, you know, that isn't how the mind wants to react. But in yoga, you learn how to discipline the mind so you can always stay calm and peaceful and not be affected by things going on and still act appropriately, then do the right thing. So, 112. These mental modifications are restrained by practice and non-attachment. So these are the two bases of Raja Yoga, practice and non-attachment. Then in 113 he defines practice. Effort towards steadiness of mind is practice. And this is the definition of meditation. So the first step in yoga, Raja Yoga, is meditation, steadying the mind. 14, practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended for a long time, without break, and in all earnestness. You need all three. You have to do it over a long period of time, you have to do it regularly, and you have to really want to be doing it. I mean, how do great athletes win gold medals in the Olympics? They spend a lot of time, every day, over a long period of time, and they really love what they're doing. So it's the same with meditation. Yeah, people say, I've meditated 20 years, I'm not getting anywhere. Well, how often did you meditate? Oh, well, last year I was doing it quite a bit. This year, maybe not quite as much. No, that's not going to work. You have to really stick with it. So, 115, the consciousness of self-mastery and one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about is non-attachment. So basically in English that's saying non-attachment is not wanting objects or things. The latest iPhone comes out, you never heard of the things it can do, but all of a sudden you can't live without it. Like what? You know. I went with a friend into B&H over on 9th Avenue, and there was this box sitting there, and he had no idea in the world what the box was. The fellow explained to him what it did, which I did not understand at all. The thing was $500. All of a sudden, my friend, who 5 minutes earlier had never heard or seen of this thing, had to have it. And he pulled out his credit card and gets it. So that's the way the mind works. It just grasps for things. It wants to pull these things in. And we have to discipline the mind so that it doesn't do that. Even The Economist had an article recently on how this digital, what do you call it, electronic devices, or digital devices, how people are becoming addicted to them. They have a good purpose. They're a single subject, good for transmitting information, and there are a lot of good things with them. So this have a lot of distracting yoga meditation. And again, it's not a moral mind on one. A lot of the distractions and that one thing yoga meditation is, but you're not a mantra or a yantra. The mantra is the verbal repetition of a sound like Om, Om Shanti, elevating any short actions in our life we create. The visual representation is the yantra, which we looked up in the last hour. So focusing the mind on one obstacle. Because what is the nature of the mind? The nature of the mind is to generate thoughts. And it's that process that we have to interrupt, that we have to be able to break for a period of time, is stopping the thought process. If you try and sit, and we can maybe do this at the end, for a minute or two, and just focus on one thing, whether it's the breath, whether it's repeating Om, you will be amazed, or maybe not so amazed, but within a few short seconds, your mind will be somewhere else. Now just think about it. This is your mind. This is what you live with. This is what we think is ruling our lives. And we don't have control over it. It's like it goes where it wants to go. We may have control for a short time, but invariably it'll go somewhere else. So that's what yoga is, getting the mind to focus. 133, we won't get into it, but Patanjali does offer some really useful things that we can do to make our life better. So this one, 133, is talking about relationships, how we respond to different people. You attract the people who are happy and who are virtuous, and then you disregard those who are not virtuous. Basically, if you're an alcoholic and you want to stop, you have to change your friends. You can't go to the bar and hang out with those people. And you say, but they're my friends. Well, what do you want? Do you want to be happy and peaceful, or do you want to have these people as your friends? So it's 133 is very important. Okay, chapter 2 of the Yoga Sutras is about the 8 limbs of yoga. So this will be what we end up on. Where'd it go? Here it is. This sheet here. So this sheet here, the 8 limbs of yoga, which people who are not here will get a packet which has this on it. We'll go through this briefly for the end of the class, end of the talk. Yoga has 8 steps. You may have heard of a group called Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga means 8 limbs. So they're basically taking a name from the Yoga Sutras. So the 8 limbs of yoga, the first 2 are ethical bases, yamas and niyamas, things to do that are ethical. The yamas are nonviolence, truthfulness, not stealing, conserving energy, and not being greedy. These sound like the 10 Commandments? They are, basically. All religions have their ethical teachings, because in order to succeed in any religious belief, you have to have an ethical basis. You have to have a way of conduct of life. The second, the niyamas, are attitudes you develop towards other people. Purity, contentment, doing some austerities. Oh no, this is for yourself. The first ones, like nonviolence, truthfulness, that's for other people and yourself. The niyamas are for yourself. These are practices you do for yourself. Purity, contentment, austerities, study, religious study, or surrendering to a form of God. So, the ethical basis of yoga. And they're good for 2 reasons. Socially, it's good because the world works better if people behave like this towards each other. And personally, it works better. If you're an honest person, if you don't steal things, if you don't hurt people, your mind thoughts will be clearer. If you do something quote-unquote wrong, your mind thinks about that. You know, it dwells in your mind. So your mind will be more peaceful if you follow these ethical principles. The third limb of yoga, which is what people think all of yoga is asana. Yoga, the physical aspect of yoga. And in the Yoga Sutras, asana means sitting, means being able to develop a comfortable seated position so you can meditate. So basically all the other asanas people do are to make the body flexible so they can sit and meditate. So that's what the definition of asana is. Pranayama. Pranayama, you start to get more subtle. Pranayama is concentrating on the breath. It's doing practices using the breath, and we can do a little bit of that too, we'll have time. This is kind of the transition between the external world and our interior world. Vipassana meditation, the Buddhist form of meditation, which I guess you read about next, maybe, at least it was the next chapter in the book. Vipassana is a form of meditation where you concentrate on the breath. In yoga, as I say, the meditation is normally on a mantra or a phrase, but both have the same purpose. So pranayama is the transition of going from the sensual, external world to the more interior, quiet world. Pratyahara, this is sense withdrawal. And you've all done this, you don't realize it maybe, but when you're doing something you really like if you're reading a book, or you're making some food that you like, or you're concentrating on anything, somebody can walk in the room and say, hey, how are you doing? And you don't hear it. Now, if somebody said something, and there was a sound vibration, but you didn't pick it up. And that's pratyahara, where you withdraw your senses to the point where you're not disturbed by anything externally. You can get to that point where if you're meditating, anything can be going on around you and it's not bothering you. Swami Chidananda used to say you should go and meditate in Times Square. That's the best place to meditate. Because you can meditate there, you can meditate anywhere. So pratyahara, very important, sense withdrawal. Then the last three phases, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, all relate to the meditative process where the mind has gone within. It's being able to stay focused. At first it won't be able to stay focused. It'll definitely drift away. The first 10, 20, 30 years the mind will drift away. After that, you'll be able to get it so the mind can begin to really focus and stay on the object. So the first phase of meditation is being able to stay focused on that object internally. The second phase, you begin to merge with the object. You become part of the object. And the final stage is total absorption, where you're just absorbed into this feeling of liberation, samadhi, which is universal to all different traditions, reaching this mystical state. So that's basically a very quick outline of Raja Yoga. We teach our teachers this, and I spend 2 hours over 6 sessions just on this. And that's just scratching the surface. But this is basically what Raja Yoga and what most yoga centers are really trying to do, but they don't get into these other aspects. Some of them do. There's Dharma Mitra, anybody hear of him? Mm-hmm. He's really good. He makes his students, or at least he used to, he makes them stay after class and listen to him talk for 5 or 10 minutes. And he'll pick one of these things, like nonviolence, or truthfulness, and he'll give it, or vegetarianism. And he'll give a talk, and they have to listen. If they want to take his class, they have to sit and listen to him. And I love that. I think that's fantastic. So, can we try a little pranayama and meditation in 5 minutes? Have most of you, I presume, maybe have tried some meditation? It's going to be a little hard to hold the microphone, but I'll do my best. So pranayama, which is the introduction to meditation, is just sitting comfortably. As you said before, have your feet on the ground. You started when you had your prayers. So just you feel grounded. You can have your hands on your knees or in your lap. Make sure your spine is nice and erect, and your shoulders and neck are relaxed. Your eyes are closed. And just start breathing through your nose naturally, but take deeper breaths. Inhale from the bottom. Start by puffing out your tummy and abdomen. Inhale more, feel your chest expanding. Take the breath all the way up, your shoulders may rise up a little. And then exhale slowly from the top. Contract your chest, stomach, abdomen, and just do that slowly. Inhale, filling up to the top, and exhaling, emptying to the bottom. And this is two things. You're doing something physical, you're moving the air in and out of your lungs slowly, and you're also doing something mental. You're bringing your awareness within, you're bringing awareness to the breath, which is within. So have your total awareness on the breath. We'll do this for a minute. And just full inhalations, full exhalations. It's controlled breathing, but it should also be very relaxed. You shouldn't feel any strain. Just for 1 minute, we'll concentrate on the flow of the breath. So that was a minute. And hopefully your mind stayed on the breath, but chances are it also wandered away from time to time. I mentioned that I first got really interested in yoga when I was at a retreat with Swami Chidananda. On the third day of the retreat, I took a pranayama class. It was just pranayama, like an hour and a half. And in that hour and a half, I went into one of these states, maybe you go into with LSD, where you just like were totally within, totally unaware of what was happening. The mind was expanding. It was quite an amazing experience. I came out of that state about 5 hours later. The room was dark. I was in there all by myself. And I'd been there for 5 hours. And time was nothing. So pranayama is a very powerful practice if you really get into it. There's a Sikh group used to be called 3HO, Yogi Bhajan's group. And I think they have a center here at Union Square. I can't remember the name of it. Golden Gate or something. And they do pranayama. So if you're into pranayama, they really do pranayama. And they develop a lot of energy. So that was pranayama. Meditation is the next stage. And we'll sit for just, again, 1 minute and pick something. If you don't have anything in particular, just pick Om Shanti. And you can sort of move your lips even for the first 10, 15 seconds and mentally helping repeat it by moving your lips and keeping your lips focused on it. But gradually stop moving the lips and just mentally be repeating Om Shanti, Om Shanti, and keep the mind on the repetition of that phrase. Now, if you already have a practice and use another phrase, that's fine. But just pick one phrase, and we'll, again, for 1 minute, let's try and stick to that one repetition. get carried away about a minute and a half.
5 hours.
We don't have time for that. So does anybody have any questions? We tried to cover a lot in a relatively short period of
We
time.
did cover a lot. That's
Incredible.
amazing.
And it's the first time I've done this too. I mean,
You
in
did a
this.
fabulous job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. And God bless you on what you're doing. The world needs many, 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 many more people like you who are looking to find that universal truth in all faiths and to share what you're learning with other people. You know, it's nice for yourself, but as the Buddha did, you have to help lift up other people too. And so thank you so much and keep up your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.